Welcome to the United States of America podcast. I am your host, Niti, and we are broadcasting live from the Food Church here on North Carolina. We welcome you to make yourself comfortable as we go over the current state of the world and our nation. If you missed past episodes, please be sure to take the time to at least watch the first episode to have a proper introduction to our conversations. These conversations are not otherwise happening in a sequential order. Please be aware that we expect you to behave with honor in the comment section. We are a people at peace, and we have declared peace to all the nations around the world. This is not a marketing or sales podcast, and we are not sovereign citizens. Sovereign citizen is an oxymoron, and if you say that you're a sovereign citizen, you are a moron. A sovereign is a free and honorable living man or woman who operates under God's law, natural law, and who honors themselves and others in peace. One definition for the word citizen is slave, but there are different kinds of citizens. Putting those two words together is an oxymoron. We also do not promote or condone TikTok, Facebook, or other social media games to test the system or to impose your beliefs onto the society at large. This is not a marketing and promotional channel. We are shining a light on knowledge that is being hidden from you, and we are sharing the truth about your birthright and your inheritance. We're interested in helping you reclaim your birthright and your inheritance. We're not sitting in judgment of you, and this information is simply a beacon of light for you to use when you choose to seek it. We do have marshals at arms that are designated as moderators who are assisting in the comment section. Please be kind with your words. If you diminish others, you will be put in a timeout or deleted and blocked as deemed necessary. If you have any questions, please put them in all caps and only enter them once per show. We're on several platforms, friends, so everybody can't see all the questions everywhere. I am joined on air with our North Carolina Marshal at Arms, Cynthia Pinkston. And now I am proud to introduce you to Justice Anna Maria, who is joining us live from Alaska today. Yay! Good morning.
Good morning, gals. How are we doing?
We're good.
We're good.
One of the questions you didn't answer last night is how's Jim?
Jim has been continuing to make progress. He's up to 1.5 miles every day.
Wow.
Doing better than I am as far as that goes. But yeah, he's continuing to get better. And we're feeling pretty good about it. We're hoping he can come home
soon.
You are really working on burning the candle on all ends of the sticks right now as you work to help guide Texas through this chaos and confusion down there, huh?
Well, it is a situation, and it shouldn't be a situation because both federal subcontractors are obligated to preserve and secure our borders. The problem has been that up until recently, there hasn't been enforcement of the constitutions. So now that we're enforcing the constitutions on them, they don't really know what to think. It's like, what? The constitutions matter? There's someone on the other side to enforce these contracts? What are we going to do? Well, I should have been obeying those provisions implicitly from the beginning until the end. But, they've tried everything they could to evade the constitutions. And now they are flat up against it because it very clearly says secure the borders.
Well, thank you for your help in working on that. I know that you're not getting much sleep. People are asking, did Anna get any sleep?
I got 4 hours.
She got her 4 hours in, so. All right. Well, let's get to the questions and start there this morning. Let's see here. Ron, what information is needed to register my own brand symbol on the LRO?
Well, you need a good quality image of it. You need to attach your contact information. If you have already processed your declaration, you have a declaration identifier that you can add to that, and simply go ahead and add it in as a additional document.
When branding my home property, do I need to add the registered brand in my will?
We don't register anything. We don't register brands. We record everything. So if you are branding your home or property, you use the recording functions of the LRO, or what other recording service you're using. You don't register anything.
And finally, do I need to publish the symbol brand anyplace else, and for how long?
No, if you publish it on the LRO, that should be sufficient. You can always return to it. Brands, symbols, and trademarks are established by serving public notice of your interest and of showing the trademark or brand. With trademarks, it takes 7 years to completely secure it, but you basically have established your right to it by publishing and recording the existence of the brand and you as the creator of it.
Karen Sandler and David Corner in Georgia. Oh, it's David Corner in Georgia. Where can I find the Supreme Court ruling on state nationals? I have looked through Anna's site. Please help.
What Supreme Court ruling on state nationals? State nationals are not defined by the federal government except in their, I believe it's Title 8 USC 1101 A21. And that's just for people that are American Samoans. So it's a completely different definition that the federales use than what we use. So I'm not aware of any Supreme Court ruling on state nationals. There's a definition of state nationals, which does not apply to us in federal code, but we have our own definition of state national.
Anna, I think this is where people are always getting lost because they want to see evidence of our truth in the water jurisdiction, and they're just not going to find it there.
Well, I keep trying to tell people we live under the Declaration of Independence. It's our federal employees that live under the constitutions. So the constitutions don't talk much about us. We're hardly there. Why should we be? We're not the subject of the constitutions. And, people try to go back to the federal code, the federal code, the federal code. Well, the federal code doesn't apply to us either. The federal code, 90% of the federal code or more applies to our federal employees. It doesn't apply to us. People keep bringing up federal code and trying to shove it at us and saying, oh, it was published in the Federal Registry. Well, so what? That means it doesn't apply to us. The only code the only federal code that applies to us is required to be published in the congressional record, the federal record. It is not all the stuff on the Federal Registry. So anyway, we need to get our heads out of our butts and realize that we have a complete separate government, an American government, that doesn't use any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Anna. We have our government, that we are the government, and we're the people running the government who haven't been running it or showing up. And so, in meantime, it's the indoctrination, it's all of the programming won't allow them to acknowledge us. If the water people don't acknowledge us, well, we're here, we're alive, and we're here. We just have to stand up. And this is a very difficult concept for people to recognize and realize, and they're looking for evidence of it everywhere. But you are the evidence, friends, because you're here, you're alive.
Well, and we have our government. I mean, like I keep telling people, when I was in school, we had two books, one called American History, one called U.S. History or United States History. So it was apparent to people of my generation that there are two governments. Okay? There are two histories, there's two governments. And it's that simple. It's two books, it's not one. And, I keep trying to teach people about the federal code, and they keep stumbling over it. They're trying to understand the federal government. The federal government. Well, the federal government is nothing more or less than some foreign subcontractors that we hired to provide us with specific enumerated services and then gave them the power to provide those services. It's that simple. There's nothing mysterious about it.
Timothy White says, a recent citizenship article is great. If I must be a citizen of any stripe, then I choose heaven and cannot be a dual citizen. How can I serve the American government without being a dual citizen?
Well, you don't. You don't have to serve the government at all. The government is here to serve the people. And the work of the government is to protect the people and their assets, and that's all the government needs to do. If you want to be an American state national and just, enjoy and have your birthright and not bother people and not hurt people, well, hell, go ahead. We're not here to force you to come to work and actually populate your own government, which would be wise, but, if you don't want to participate, you don't want to participate. American state nationals can participate in their state government without being state citizens, but we still need state citizens to enforce the constitutions. And I think that many people are very concerned that we don't have enforcement of the constitutions, and they don't realize that we have to have our state assemblies up and rolling, and we have to have state assemblies in state citizens in those state assemblies to be able to enforce the constitutions, because it was the state citizens that actually signed off on the constitutions. If you're not a party to a contract, you can't enforce it. It's that simple.
Tyler asks, please ask Anna what she thinks about the tactical civic movement going around the country.
Well, I don't really know a whole lot about it. I know a lot of people have tried to seize control of whatever part of the government they are identifying with. Let's put it that way. Municipal citizens are trying to seize hold of the control of the municipal government, and British territorials are trying to come to grips with the Brits and all of their hierarchy. And, trying to slog your way through that without a firm grounding in who you are and as an American and being being grounded, so to speak, is a very dangerous thing to do. So even though I don't know a whole lot about the tactical civics movement, what I have seen indicates that there are a lot of people out there kind of going off half-cocked, and they need to do the long-term work. They need to study so that they know what they're really facing.
Okay. How do we write our wills out as an American state national?
Well, the best way to do it is write it on the flyleaf of a Bible in longhand and have a couple of witnesses there, and use your God-given seal to identify who did it.
Anna, what about the W4 sandwich? Is that still for American state nationals to use?
We are so close to getting rid of the IRS in sum total that I really don't suggest anybody try messing around with it anymore. I mean, they are they are so far out of line to even be sending us anything in the mail that, you know, we've got maybe 6 weeks, a couple of months before they are no more. I just ignore them. But if you wanted to, you could send it back and say, hey, you're misaddressing me. You're acting outside your jurisdiction and misaddressing me. Stop.
If the assembly does not know who created their seals, can they simply claim that seal?
Well, unless it has a copyright mark on it or some other indication that somebody claimed it, you should assume that it's work for hire.
Oh.
Well, you know, if you want to claim a copyright on something, you actually sign it and you make your little C with a circle around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless somebody signed it and, you know, made some claim on it, then you should assume that it is work for hire.
Okay. So when we get ready on our assemblies, we're working on trying to stand those up. And in the process, the guidebooks, we're looking at handbooks, guidebooks, SOPs. We know you've spoke to that and said, you know, we can use a guidebook. So now we're trying to bilk out all of our positions. Once we get our positions, then we want to make sure our courts function. So we want to try a couple of trial courts and, you know, a couple of mocks and mock trials, see if they work. And then we're ready to put in the Milligan ex parte. And then we're ready to then process to the next thing, which would be standing up, which comes back to you as the Federation for stand-up ability, correct? Not?
Yeah, there's a final review. There's a kind of a, I guess you would say, you're looking at what's been done. You're making sure that things are in order and functioning, and then you issue the I'm sorry, issue the announcement that you are fully seated.
And the fully seated, once we've got a functioning assembly with 4 pillars operational and our court up and operational, then we're going to come back to review from you or whoever you have selected in that place. Then we're seated. Once we're seated, now we can start holding real trials. We can start having real cases, claims come up, and then we're ready to proceed on with the justice of whatever the outcome of the trial will be. And then what happens after that? Let's say that someone's found guilty of something and they're charged to have to pay for damages done. Where does that money come from? How does our bondsman fit in? I know I blowed it.
That's really something that's a little bit beyond this discussion, Cynthia.
Okay, skip it.
We'll move on. We'll move on. Okay.
So just let me very briefly say, the bondsman acts sort of like an insurer. He takes in the money that is the bond, right? And the person is given their limitations on that bond by the court itself. And I'm sure that you've seen enough instances where somebody's been out on bond, right? They've been charged with a crime, but the court said, well, you know, you're not a risk to society. You just messed up and are on trial for something, right? So we're going to let you out on bond. We're going to require that you pay $500 and that you agree to stay in the state, for example, until the trial date. Those are the sorts of things where, you know, you're setting up individual contracts and the bondsman is responsible for holding the money. And if that person then is subsequently found to have, say, left the state and violated some provision of the bond, well, then the bond is forfeit. We just had a case here in Alaska where a young guy was arrested for indecent exposure and numerous other stupid things. Nothing that was actually injury, but, so he was out on bond, and then he turned around and got into a fight with his brother and got arrested. So the bond was forfeited and he was back in jail. These sorts of things are like little individual contracts that you make with the court. So they'll all be different, and the bondsman is responsible for collecting and holding the money and acting appropriately, depending on the actions of the person under the bond.
And that money will come back to the state. So the bondsman doesn't keep it, and the General Assembly, it will come back to our treasury and be put in as funds there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it will be a bond recoupment where, the bond was placed there as a contract, as an agreement between the court representing the people of the state and the individual who messed up and did something that at least arguably resulted in harm or injury. And so if they break that contract, they break that agreement, then the money is forfeit.
Anna, the electronic signature, autograph, these are a lawful because they are not wet ink on a contract. Okay, so when you're hiring somebody and or whatever you're doing, and they're asking for these electronic signatures, and they're doing it on everything, like between the banks and jobs and everything. In fact, we know that if you're trying to get a job, a lot of times you'll want to print something out if you can and try to write on it. And nowadays the HR groups are not allowing that because they want everything to be streamlined through their system, and they won't it's not the same thing anymore when you get a job where you go in and you fill out a bunch of paperwork for a day. They send you all this stuff and they want it all in the system. What are your suggestions? I don't know what this person's asking specifically about this, but I guess talk about electronic signatures versus the wedding. Is there anything you can suggest that we do?
Well, you have an unlimited right to contract. So if you want to contract using an electronic signature instead of a wet ink signature, you can do so at your own risk. Okay. So how do you protect yourself, whether it's in wet ink or whether it's on using a program? Well, you use a byline. You claim authorship of that individual autograph, even if that autograph is just composed of, the letters in a specific font. Okay, so you claim the authorship, you use a byline. You say by, : and then the signature, whatever you're using as a representation of your signature. Now, when I was a young pup and I was first getting acquainted with the ways of the world, one of my older mentors took me aside and he just took a pen and he went and I'm looking at this squiggle and I looked at him like he was completely nuts, and I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's an executive signature." Completely illegible, had nothing to do with his name. But it was his scrawl. It was his signature. That's what he used as his signature. And by doing that, then he divorced himself from his name, right? It just became this symbol, this sign, your signature, right? This just became his sign that he used on his checks and everything else. And he divorced his signature from his name entirely. And this is what all the executives do. This is what all the top executives do. unless they're politicians. But I mean, the guys that are CEOs of these major corporations, and you can't tell their signature from a hand scratch. You really can't. So, you can use anything for your signature. And the problem is that one of the common tricks they do is they make an X, as if they were telling you where to sign it, right? And so then you go along and you write your signature on that X or next to that X, and they claim the X is your signature.
I thought it was only doctors that had such bad handwriting and signing. Even on everything a doctor does, you can't read it. So I figured you had to be a doctor to read that stuff.
Yeah, well,
For a closing attorney, and she always did her little squiggle because she had to sign all the closing documents for our real estate closings, and it was always her little loop-de-loop, and it was just whatever it was. And plenty of attorneys are doing that for sure. And
it's a way to avoid liability. It's a way to avoid contracting using your name. You use a sign to contract. And so you have a lot of latitude as to what you're using for your signature.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some liability issues involved there so that you can avoid liability and you can avoid attachment to your name by using that kind of a quote unquote executive signature. You can basically use anything for your signature. Even an X can be a signature. And so when you see that they've marked a contract with an X, you want to write your name right over that X. Make it part of your signature and use your byline to claim the whole mess. Okay? But you really have to think about this in terms of like almost like a trademark. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So then in an electric version, we'd have to, like, if we wanted to just use some symbols from the keyboard, then if they want to be crazy about it, then I guess we could just add a little couple symbols to be able to own, if they want us only to do electronic, that removes liability as well. Is that right?
Well, what it does is it makes it harder for them to mess with you.
Right. Okay. There is a new individual in this person's assembly who we don't know because they didn't tell us what state they're on. Y'all, please tell us what state you're on when you're saying things so that we know what you're talking about. But in any case, Fireball Production says there is a new individual in the assembly who demands PayPal statements from the assembly treasurer, even if the assembly decided not to disclose private information. Who is correct? That's a lot of different questions. It's like a PayPal situation and a private.
Okay. Now, I'm assuming
a lot of things.
I have to assume a lot of things. I'm assuming that the assembly treasurer is using PayPal to conduct business, and that they're using a private PayPal account to do so. Well, if it's assembly business, it's public. If it's somebody's private account and they're doing assembly business, then they've agreed to let that be released to the assembly to the extent that the assembly's business is been commingled with theirs. For many years, I kept the Alaska court going and commingled court expenditures with my own expenditures and just kind of flagged, this was for this was for that, this was, and so that you could look at this statement and there's my grocery bill, and you just had to kind of paw through it and make sense of it that way. But really, if you're doing that out of necessity, it shouldn't really be a big problem. I mean, if you're an honest person and you're not doing things like going to strip clubs without your spouse knowing, you got nothing to fear, right? Who cares how much you spent on groceries? It's it shouldn't be a big problem.
It's just having everything on the record, y'all. I think at the end of the day, and like we're talking about, Cynthia and I have been talking about this a lot. It's like we're doing business with everybody who we speak with, and when we're doing business, we're on the record because we're on the up and up. We're not off the record. We're not in a private club. We're not in a private meeting. We are on the record. And so it's funny. And a lot of people are like very upset about it, nervous about it, saying that we're infringing on their free right to speak and free speech. We're not infringing on anybody's free speech. We're just saying if you're going to say something out loud, then it should be on the record. It's on the record. That's all. And we're on the record all the time. And not afraid to be on the record because we're not saying things that we aren't thinking about, and putting some thought into first, right?
Yeah, our assemblies, everything, all of our meetings, everything is on the record. We're not hiding anything from anybody. Anna has a saying, you can look up my skirt till you find Jesus. If you find Jesus in that case, then we've got a problem, but that needs to be on the record. Everything is out there for everybody to see, examine, find, track our money. Look
Right.
at it. If there's something out of place, you've got a right to ask about it.
Right. Track what we're saying. If we're just making up lies and immorality, then just tell us so that we can just fix it, right? We don't want to be lying or being immoral or misbehaving. And so we're just on the record because there's no reason not to. Look, we ask Anna questions. Sometimes Anna gets like, Niti, what are you asking me for this question? And we're just like, people want to know. Okay, so Anna, who does the Marshal at Arms report to? Is it the General Assembly or is it the Chief Continental Marshal?
The General Assembly.
And
Marshal at Arms is an assembly office.
okay, and so is the General Assembly approving their guidebooks, or is the Marshal being trained and receiving their guidebooks from the Continental Marshals?
Well, there's a couple of projects that are in progress right now, and we will have multiple publications, though at some point we may just combine them all into one book.
So from the Federation, they'll receive their guidebooks from Federation level, not from the General Assembly.
Right. Well, it's one of those things. How can the General Assembly tell the General Assembly how to do this? I mean, there's a reason there's a summoning authority, and this is it.
That's the key. That's the key, Anna. The summoning authority is who gives the instruction for the Marshal at Arms. Praise the Lord. That is what we were trying to get at. Where does the authority for the Marshal at Arms come from? The summoning authority.
Look, the Marshal at Arms is a totally misunderstood office because there, again, is a disconnect between the land and the sea.
Yes.
If you look up Marshal at Arms on the internet, you're going to see the definition of the sea. You're going to see the sea definition of the Marshal at Arms office. That is not what we use. On the land, it is a different office. So we call it a Marshal at Arms, and it's causing confusion where people think that it's the sea definition, but we're using the land definition. Okay.
I can sing hallelujah right now.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We're cleaning it up with simple questions because there's a lot of chaos about it. And so the Federation is bringing their guidebook. It is coming from the Federation. And that's because the General Assembly can't know what the summoning authority is wanting and instructing. Let's just be clear. That's all we need to know. That's all. That's all.
Next
That's
question.
big answer. Big answer. Big answer. Big answer to a big question. And so we will just be waiting. And we know there's projects working. I know I'm working on something with you too, Anna. We got projects going on and writing because the Federation is creating this. Because the Federation is the summoning authority. There is an article about this. We will talk about that article on Friday if you come to the live on Telegram. Anna, I just keep reading the summoning authority article that you have. It's really good. And I think that sometimes we just have to read it again and again until we comprehend it fully, because it's so far outside of the programming of the day-to-day that we've currently been operating in. So we'll just keep repeating it until we get it. So you don't have to waste your breath saying it again and again. We're going to read it because you wrote it. We'll just keep reading it till we get it.
Yeah, well, the thing is that there had to be summoning authorities established. And especially in a case like this where nobody's really done this in 150 years. I mean, everybody who did this prior to this is dead. So,
So what do you do?
Yeah, so it's not like we can turn to an assembly and say, okay, well, you went out of session last August, time to come back into session. Because we're looking at states that haven't been in session in 150 years, some of them. And so we have to take responsibility for helping them through this process so that everybody learns it. And then it'll be easy. Then it'll be much, much simpler. People will just say, go to the coordinator and boom, everything goes into place. The sessions committee goes whap, and there you are.
Boom and a whap. Boom and a whap. Okay, Nina says, how does one fund their trust if they are status corrected? This is a California ASN.
Fund their trust. Why would you be functioning with a trust of any kind? It does not make sense.
Michelle has a great class on California as your coordinator there, Nina. You should be watching her class. It's a really good class, Nina. Talk to Michelle, because Michelle Ford has a fantastic course and plenty of education, and she's your coordinator and has everything that you need to know.
Right. The only kind of trust that we typically use is a last will and testament trust.
Mm.
And really, if you're a living person, that's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question. Says, I was born in California, but they have their pillars up, but I live in a different state. Will my prosperity account be funded from California? If so, how long until the accounts are accessible for spending?
Is this person back on the land and soil? We don't really know. And if so, where do you live? Which state? Also, you should be on the assembly for your state. And then you would know that you were a Californian. And then also you would have instruction. So let's go back to your state and let's sign up and come back to the land and soil. And then let's talk to your coordinator who's going to help you with all of this. And that way Anna doesn't have to spend, she's already losing her voice right now. Unless you want to say something about that. Besides that, Anna.
Well, it's a good question. As far as the state is concerned, if you're born in California, you're a Californian for life, even if you move and go to Nevada, say. Okay. Now, do you have a special interest in California, even though you're living in Nevada? As she said, he said, am I being funded off of California or am I being funded off the state where I now live? It's a fair question. And there might even be some differences. Because every state is different. Every state has different resources. Every state has different physical topography and, and so it's a very fair question. Right now, what we're working off are what I will call general recoupments. It's money that's being accumulated and brought back under our control because it was money that was expended for wrong reasons. It was money that we paid out that we didn't have to pay out, that we didn't actually owe. It was money that we were bamboozled out of because we were paying interest on a non-existent national debt. It's, there's money that's coming back from mortgages that people paid that they didn't have to pay generations ago. I mean, there's all sorts of recoupment money that is just going in a general pot. And everybody is getting a recoupment out of that, quite apart from the individual states. And we haven't gotten to the issue of individual state trusts yet. And what I'm thinking is that most likely those state trusts will be vested in those states. And so that will be, one of the means of funding the state governments.
How does one connect with Friday's live telegram? Niti? You're muted.
Margaret, that's on the link in the show notes. So if you go to the show notes link tree, then there's a link for the telegram. Okay. All right.
And another question that I see here is the people who are in the new coordinator training, and you're about a little more than halfway, a little more than a third or halfway. And when this is completed, what is the process then? They have to be vetted. They have to finish the coordinator training. And then there has to be like an accessible into their assembly. So what is the plan going forward for the new coordinators that are in the training?
Well, this is just an introductory. This is just to get everybody kind of lined up and on the same coordinates. And then we're going to follow up with our handbook. And then we're going to go through the handbook as sort of an intermediary. And by that time, we should be getting down to, actual question answers, sort of like what we're doing here. But everybody will have enough education about the subject matter that they'll be asking specific questions.
And as these new coordinators get into their state and they build their assembly and they start putting their committees together, then they're going to come back with questions for you because they're actually in the process of doing something. And now they're going to go, that doesn't fit. I need an answer. That's where your training is going to come in to go back and now ask the questions or see what the other states are doing.
Right. Well, and that's, depending on the situation and the subject matter, that's completely valid. There are unique things that arise in every state. And so we want to give a means by which those questions can come forward and be answered, and not just leave everybody stewing on the sidelines or making it up as they go. We've had quite a lot of that go on, and it usually results in problems for everyone concerned.
In our General Assembly, we are now at the place where we only need a couple more things here on North Carolina. Then we're ready to start and try and make this thing function. As we start functioning with our mock trials, our General Assembly, our business pillar, which we're in the process of writing that, our militia, and getting those pieces functioning. Once we get to there, is there a timeline? That's a question. What is the timeline after you're functioning before the seated? Is the seating a quick process or is the seating a slow process, seeing so people have just heard about seating?
Well, no, it's a pretty quick process. I mean, no doubt we'll have a sit down with each assembly. We'll answer questions. They'll ask questions. We'll answer as best, whatever is appropriate. But really, once you are functioning, you're functioning. If you've got your court up and you're addressing your own people in your own court, and you know how to send indictments to the district attorneys concerning the operations of their people, there's really nothing much more for us to do, as far as state government is concerned. We can then retreat to our own work and give full attention to international issues, which is really what the Federation is designed to do.
And you said we need 9 states set up in order to have a functioning, ready to go to the next step. And somebody asked, is that 33 or just 9? Because there were only 9 states in the original colony, and you said 9, so they just wanted to question the 33.
No. What we're talking about are 2 different things.
Correct.
The 9 is the number of states that have to call for a general session of the states. Okay, so that's one of the summoning ways that you can summon the states into session. Remember, there are 3 ways that the states can be summoned into session. They can be summoned by your president, meaning the president of the Federation. Okay. They can be summoned by a quorum of 9 states getting together and saying, hey, we need to get the states all together. We need to call everybody into session. This is an important issue. We need input, so you can have 9 state assemblies call the rest of the state assemblies into session. And you can also have them called into session by the head of state. Now, there was no president to call you into session. There hasn't been a Federation president since 1872. And there was not a quorum of states assemblies functioning. There weren't 9 state assemblies functioning anymore. So the only option that we had now was to use the head of state position to call them into session. So that's what we did. Now, once your assemblies are established and functioning again, and everybody knows how this works, and you're just going into and out of session on a kind of fluid schedule. Okay. You'll all know each other. You'll know how to do this. You'll pass it on to your sons and daughters. They'll know how to do this. And it won't be such a big deal. But right now it's a huge deal because we've not only had to go through this whole process of declaring our birthright status and publishing it and recording it and all this other hoo-ha before we could even get started assembling. But then we've had to begin and rebuild this from the ground up with nobody who's there to guide it. There is nobody left alive who's ever been through this process.
Next question.
Well,
is that the process where we get to where we start looking to elect a president? At what point do we start looking for the United States to look at possibly an election of a president?
Well, you have to understand that there are multiple presidents.
I know that 3.
Okay. So you've got multiple presidents, and you have to be sure which one you're talking about at any given moment. And that's sort of how we got into this position and all the problems that we've had, is that they've substituted one president, one kind of president, for a totally different office in a different jurisdiction even. And so, yeah, you have 3 American presidents, and you have 3 federal presidents.
Why don't we explain to everybody what we're talking about, Anna? Because we got Kimberly over here saying, can we remove our governor from Illinois and do something about these illegals? Yes, Kimberly, we can put up our 4 pillars and stand our state and courts up. And so that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about arriving, showing up. We are the government, So we have to stand up. And so once we have our actual American government up, then we can not throw them out, but take them over and give them their marching orders and tell them what we want, because we've hired them. They work for us under the Constitution, because we're not under the Constitution. We're under the Declaration of Independence, and we're over all the three constitutions. I'm just kind of doing a synopsis, Anna, because we got a lot of new people, a lot of folks that are watching us on YouTube world who are tuning in from around the globe. They don't know what we're talking about, and we want them to know what are we doing here. And then we have all these folks that think that we're the crazy, illegal, whatever people. We're trying to create some kind of ruckus over here. No, friends. We're just going back to the truth, and we're sharing the truth here. And that's what this show is about. This is about giving everyone the information that's been occulted or hidden from you for all these 150 years, because we were tricked. We were usurped and tricked.
Well, it's an easy way to say it. Before DC, there was a government. We're going back over there. We're going back over there and starting from over there.
From Philadelphia, when Philadelphia was the capital with the Liberty Bell, that everybody forgot about the Liberty Bell and the Philadelphia Liberty Bell. Philadelphia. If you really, really think hard and maybe focus, Danielson, then you can remember Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is our capital.
See? Philadelphia. It's not just about the Philly cheesesteaks, friends. It's about our capital.
Washington, D.C. is the federal capital.
Federal.
There's a distinction. This is what I was talking about earlier.
Yes.
American history, U.S. history.
When people say end the Fed, they want to end the federal nonsense that's going on. That's what they're talking about. But for that to happen, we have to stand up.
Right. Well, there's the American government. The American government created and hired the federal government to provide certain enumerated services. Okay, so it's time for you to become acquainted with, aware of, and enabled to operate the American government. Otherwise, the subcontractors get away with murder and more.
Roger Taylor wants to know, was Franklin Pierce our last president?
Well, he was the last. He was actually a lawyer, so he was prohibited from being the Federation president, okay? But he was a president of the British territorial contractor who was loyal to America. So he was an attorney, but he was an American in that he made his decisions and did everything according to what was good for America. He did not do everything that was good for England. And therein lies the rub. That's why they were prohibited from being officers in the Federal Republic.
Well, Anna, you did it. Our time is up. We got through all the questions. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week on Tuesday. So let's keep it going, friends.